TLC Talk Radio. It's your girl Tasha on TashaTalkz. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube. Catch us every day on TLCTalkRadio.com, 24/7 edutainment. And I have a special in-studio guest with me, my friend Jason, journalist, fabulous friend, fellow Eagle. And we wanted to kind of just talk about some headlines. We're in Chicago, and we had a little bit of a scandal.
Yeah, you can call it a little bit.
A little bit of a scandal. All right, okay, a lot of a scandal. With an outgoing superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, and Eddie Johnson. And so there's a rumor going around that the IDOT signs that are up reference him. So the IDOT signs say, Cousin Eddie says nothing's happening on Twitter. I'm paraphrasing. Nothing's happening on Twitter.
Put the phone down.
Yeah. And so a source close to me has said that, yes, that is in reference to the outgoing superintendent. And I cracked up laughing. I was like, leave the man alone. It's over, I guess. But it's not, because things keep hitting the news. Jason, enlighten the TashaTalkz audience.
Well, in terms of that sign, I actually saw that sign with my wife. I think it was over Thanksgiving, which was before all this broke out.
Okay.
So we kept saying, who the heck is Eddie? And why is he telling us about texting?
Right.
So, now people have just taken it and it's blown up into all sorts of stuff. I don't know if they're really talking about him. I think they were talking Cousin Eddie because he was a police chief, wanted people to be safe,
sure,
and put the phones down, texting and driving. And now it's just taking on a life of its own due to the new news that has come out about Cousin Eddie.
Oh, Jesus.
Former superintendent.
Some Thanksgiving tea.
Right. So, we've got this big scandal going on here in Chicago with our superintendent. This story actually broke on Monday in terms of his firing.
Sure.
But the news had come out previous to that that there was a situation. Back in October, he was discovered by some officers responding to a call, slumped over the wheel of his car about a block away from his home in Bridgeport in Chicago. And there was all sorts of rumors and innuendos and people running, hey, what happened to him? He gave the reason that he had a bad reaction to the medicine he was taking. For people who don't know, a couple years ago, our former police superintendent Eddie Johnson had a kidney transplant.
Yes.
And so he's been taking the medicines and things to help balance out some of the problems that he's had from the kidney transplant. So that seems pretty plausible,
sure,
when you hear that. And then, even if
he mentioned blood pressure medicine.
Right, blood pressure medicines and stuff like that. Okay, so then all of a sudden it turned into, okay, I was out at dinner with some friends and we had a drink or two.
Sure.
And I think it was just a mixture of the medicines and the alcohol. Well, yeah, that can happen too.
Sure.
And if you're really not careful, you will not wake up.
Yeah.
From that too. So now I think the public was even more sympathetic. Okay, well, this guy's had some health challenges and, he went and had a couple of drinks. He's retiring, at the end of the year. He'd announced that he was going to be retiring at the end of the year about 3 weeks ago. So everyone was trying to take him for his word, but there was still, some questions about it. And journalists being journalists, we're going to dig.
Sure.
Hey, what's going on here? And the first clue for me, even though I was not covering this story, I try to keep an eye on things, even though I don't live in the Chicago area anymore. But the first thing for me was they weren't forthright in terms of releasing some of the information. So they can release 911 tapes pretty much immediately. So the first clue to me that something may have been up is that they never released any 911 tapes. The officers who found him allowed him to drive home on his own. After you just find a person slumped over in their car, you didn't call an ambulance to the scene.
Right, one block or not.
Right.
Just we need to get you some help.
Well, and here was my whole thing that really kind of piqued my interest as a journalist. Okay, this is your boss. If you find your boss slumped over a block away from his home, most people are just going to take their boss home.
Right.
Oh, you just got to get down the street. Or they're going to make sure you get home and that you are safe.
Sure.
It's that simple. That didn't occur. So that made me think, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, something's up.
They came up on him. Nobody said anything. Okay, well, let's see what this is all about. The story is still unraveling, let's say. There's an inspector general doing an investigation, and that report is expected to be released sometime within the next few weeks. For me, as a journalist, I think that's the crux of the story. I think that's whatever the inspector general has found in his investigation is going to be what the story really is. But we have a job to try to get information as well. I'm not sure what is going to be in that report. We have uncovered a number of things as reporters in the Chicago market. The Chicago Crusader just came out with their article today, which has got even some more details that we're not finding in some of the other news outlets as well. They did a really good job. It comes to find out that the superintendent was indeed out drinking. He was also out with another officer drinking, and they became intimate at a public restaurant. Yeah. They were seen allegedly on the security camera of a restaurant here in downtown Chicago, having drinks for several hours and making lovey-dovey, so to speak, in this restaurant. The other problem with this is he's married. Okay, he's been married a couple years. So when I first heard that part, I was like, I'm not the gossip police. I don't really like doing stories that are gossip. It has to be something concrete for me. Him cheating on his wife, his biggest problem is going to be his wife.
Right, it's not going to be us.
Right, or if he's a spiritual person, his God, or however he looks at it like that. But the problem was, and what turned it into a news story in my eyes, was that when we found out this was another Chicago police officer, and that we found out that this particular officer he was involved with was a member of his personal security detail. Okay, and she became a member of his security detail when he became superintendent. He moved her to that detail. Okay. So now your journalistic instincts are starting to move and kick in, and you're going, okay.
Why'd he move her?
Why'd he move her? How did she get up here? How long has this been going on now?
Sure.
This wasn't, he came out with his statements that I made a lapse in judgment. Okay, that's a very vague statement. But when? When was the lapse?
Yeah.
And were there several lapses? Or is this just who you are? How long has this been going on?
Sure.
That's where it became a story, because now you're talking about an administrator having a relationship with someone who they have to give orders to.
Subordinate.
A subordinate. And that is where this gets really dicey for me. I don't know why Officer Donald, who was the lady who he was involved with, I don't know what their intentions were. I don't know what their relationship was. I don't know if it was personal. But hey, let's say she says, hey, I never wanted to be on his security detail. He put me on that detail. And once he put me on that detail, he started hitting on me. He started harassing me. That's a narrative that can now come out of this.
Sure.
Even if that's not the case, he's now put himself in this position. And by doing that, because of the position he's in, Tosh, and this is what people need to see, he actually put the Chicago taxpayers in jeopardy. Yeah. And I think that is what prompted Mayor Lightfoot to take the step that she took to fire him. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, because she comes out with that narrative, particularly in this culture.
Yes, in this Me Too culture, exactly.
Man, exactly. You're getting sued, and even if it's not accurate and it comes out that it's not accurate, look at all the time and the resources wasted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and then the other thing that people have to understand too is the city of Chicago is currently in a legal lawsuit with Jussie Smollett. Yeah. And a lot of Smollett's defense was the credibility of the police department, in particular the superintendent, who he particularly named in the suit. So now
This
comes
help.
up. Right. This doesn't help. And let's be honest, most of us know Jesse made that up.
Right.
Because we are from Chicago. We know nobody's standing outside when it's 20 below zero, dude. Not at 2 a.m.
With bleach.
Right, with bleach. We're not doing that. So, but you've now put the city in jeopardy by doing this. You're the police superintendent. If the police superintendent is caught dirty and in a lie, I mean, that's going to cause big problems. So that's basically the crust of the story. What the Crusader found out, and a great job by journalist Eric Johnson, was that the superintendent had actually been drinking before he went to the other club that everyone knows about. Mm-hmm. There's a local bar called Block 22, which is on 22nd in Michigan, and sources told Crusader that the chief was down there earlier that evening and drinking with some fellow officers. Nothing out of control, didn't seem inebriated or anything, but he did have a couple drinks down there. Mm-hmm. And so then he left there, went to the other bar, which is, I believe, is in the Board of Trade building, and had drinks with Officer Donald, and that's where he's seen on the surveillance. So this had been going on, a while that night, mm-hmm. back in October. This wasn't just he met up with her and they drank there. He was out kicking it. Yeah. He was out kicking it, and it's disappointing on many levels, especially when we see African Americans get to these power positions where they can really make a difference. And we know that there are many people who don't want to see them in these positions. Absolutely. Superintendent Johnson promoted a lot of females. He promoted a lot of minorities to position in the police department. Mm-hmm. A lot of those positions were questioned. A lot of people may not realize, but his wife actually filed a complaint with EEOC when she passed the lieutenant's exam, I think a couple years ago, because people were accusing her of cheating because of her relationship to him, mm-hmm. saying he gave her the answers, he greased the wheels for her, she's not worthy, she didn't pass the lieutenant's test, blah blah blah. Now I've talked to several police officers excuse me, mm-hmm. who said she's a pretty smart woman. Mm-hmm. She's a pretty smart woman. They don't believe she cheated on the test, mm-hmm. but they also said she got a little slickness to her game too. So not everything may be on the up and up. I'm not sure on that. But all these different narratives are out here. Mm-hmm. And that's just not a good thing. It's not a good look for the black community at all. No. We have these people in these power positions, and then there's all this scandal mm-hmm. that's coming with it and coming behind it. And the Chicago Police Department has got a history of this toxic culture going back decades. The consent decree that they had right after President Obama had left office, as soon as President Trump got into that office, the consent decree was in jeopardy. They have gone through with some of the measures that were recommended to them to do, and then there are a lot of them that they haven't even touched yet. Sure.
That's wow. So the culture you mm-hmm. talked about before we kind of took to air, mm-hmm. we talked about how a lot of the culture is the same across the country. Yeah. Talk about Philadelphia.
So Philadelphia just had a huge story as well, came out a couple of days ago in the Philadelphia Inquirer, a great piece of reporting. They had a deputy commissioner out there in Philadelphia who had been on the force about 30 years, had risen through the ranks. He has now been charged with about 8 felonies for sexual assault on female police officers. Wow. In Philadelphia who are under his command. Mm-hmm. One, he actually knew her father, had served with her father, and the officer's father said, yeah, this guy's a good guy. He'll take care of you. He'll watch out for you. Wow. And so...
unwillingly led his daughter to slaughter.
Exactly. So when she first passed the academy, he had told her, hey, don't worry, I'll watch out for you. I'll take care of you. But when you get to your precinct or district, I don't know what they call them in Philly, you may have some problems. There may be some guys, hitting on you. She's a very attractive young woman, and she became police officer at 21, which is extremely young.
Sure.
She was one of the youngest female officers, I think, in the history of the Philadelphia Police Department. And within days of her getting out in the in that particular district, one of the sergeants started hitting on her, and got to the point where at one point he came by her parents' house unannounced, where she was living at the time, to see her, and her parents were like, "Hey, what's this about?" And she was like, "I don't know." And he told her, "Oh, I was just by in the neighborhood, figure I'd stop by and check on you."
You don't get your monkey stuff off my porch. Sorry, that wasn't real. That was TashaTalkz versus journalism.
I know, right? So I think, so obviously that started sending off alarm bells.
Sure.
So the harassment from that particular sergeant got to a point where her mom then told her, "Hey, go see your father's friend. Tell him what's going on." Mm-hmm. So she went to his office, and allegedly she went to report and tell him what was going on. And according to the story, at that point he got up from behind his desk, came in front of her where he was standing there, placed her on his desk, and proceeded to put his tongue down her throat as she tried to resist, and then started allegedly groping her breast and other parts of her body. And she got assaulted right there in the office with the commander. And this particular commander was a big guy. He played collegiate football for Temple University. He also played for the Philadelphia Eagles for a couple years. He's about 6'6", 350, 360 pounds.
Yeah. And what was she going to do?
And you're talking about a female officer who was about 5'3", 130, 140 pounds max. So that was her first, dealings with him in assault. And then there were 3 other women who also came forward and said that he had assaulted them as well. These women, many of them left the police force. Sure. Many of them have suffered traumatized therapy they needed, and also just being ostracized from the law enforcement community. They lost their careers over this type of stuff. Mm-hmm. They did report these allegations, and the allegations were generally swept under the rug. At one point, there was some findings against this commissioner, and they demoted him for 30 days.
Because that'll show him.
And then they did a review of the demotion and said, "No, this isn't right. You all missed this step," and then they gave him back his job. So it was like nothing happened. And there was also another sergeant who they found who had been doing this stuff as well. So that's what we're saying. This is going on in other agencies as well. It's not just Chicago. And I think that's the bigger picture we need to look at. What are female police officers going through in some of these agencies? Mm-hmm. What type of support systems do they have? Because let's think about it. I mean, police departments, fire departments, they're mostly male dominated, alpha male dominated, physically strong men who are dealing with some of the most hellacious stuff you can see on a daily basis. Sure. I believe many of them are traumatized just by the amount of violence and gore and injuries and stuff they encounter and situations they encounter, and going into some of these homes and seeing these family situations. It's no different than a soldier going off to war.
Certainly.
They're going to come back and they've seen some stuff.
With some mental scars.
Right. And you and I have talked about this a lot in the past. The mental health in this country is absolutely atrocious. And it leads to many of the problems that we're seeing in the larger society because we will not invest as a country into mental health.
Sure.
So these officers, female officers, they deal with a lot, and especially if they are, I think all women are beautiful. Obviously, some women are more beautiful than others.
Sure.
And the ones who are really beautiful, the grass ain't always green on the other side for them. They get a lot of attention, and a lot of it is unwanted attention, which is something we're going to talk about, I know, in the next segment for women. But they're getting this unwanted attention, and they're getting it from people that, if they're doing something wrong, who do you really go to? Because they're the people you're supposed to be able to go to if something happens to you.
They are allegedly the arm of the law, the enforcement. Right.
They're supposed to be the guardians of the society. Well, what do you do when the guardians are the ones who are committing these acts?
And even after. You talked about the trauma that they suffered. A lot of them left their career. If I have a car accident, I'm scared to call an officer now because I've been so traumatized by this other thing. So I'm thinking about the lady in Philadelphia. I literally went to report that I was being harassed, and then I got full on assaulted by a dude who was friends with my dad. Do you know what that did to her psyche?
Right. And you really got to read the story on what happened to this officer after that. She ended up leaving the force, going back, living at home with her parents. She had no job, no money, no prospects or anything. She went into depression. She ended up getting tattoos all over her body. I mean, an abundant amount of tattoos and piercings, and was just really in a dark, dark place.
Probably in an attempt to cover up.
Right. What had happened to her. I mean, what could she really do? When her own father was a police officer who then served with the person who assaulted her, her father is supposed to be the protector. He unknowingly put her in danger. So I'm sure that young lady had a lot she's dealing with.
Sure.
A lot she's dealing with. But it's a problem. There's a blog website here in Chicago. It's been controversial for years. It's been going on almost 15 years, but it's called Second City Cop.
Okay.
And it's a place where Chicago police officers go and vent out their feelings on situations that go on in the city, whether it's them negotiating a new contract with the city, whether it's situations that happen to officers.
Sure.
They talk about it. It's very unfiltered. Now, of course, they do it mostly anonymously. Nobody's going to go out there and say it. But there's a lot of interesting conversations that take place on that blog site. They break news. They were the first that said Eddie Johnson was going to get fired this past Monday. They wrote that story on Friday.
Wow.
Because they got a tip that it was getting ready to go down. So you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
Because it's basically just people commenting and anonymous thoughts. But myself as a journalist, I can read through it. I can read through the lines, and I can start corroborating a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff they're saying. They've said several times that they look at female recruits starting at the academy and trying to see who they can get at. Which reminds me of like some high school stuff. The new freshman girls are coming in and the upperclassmen are sitting there, okay, let's take a look. Let's see who we got coming in here.
With much larger consequences.
Right. So it's a very, some of the stuff I've learned has been quite disturbing. Sure. Can't corroborate a lot of it, so I can't obviously do a full article on it, but I can put it out there that these are things that are being suggested, that there are problems within the department in terms of the culture. And some officers don't feel that way. Some officers do feel that way.
Sure.
But if some are saying that it is that way and some are saying it's not, it's something that we need to look at.
Yeah. And then you wonder, okay, what is the solution? Like, who's policing? Because we mentioned earlier, off camera, off mic, absolute power corrupts. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So what is the solution? What does that look like? There's so many, moving parts to these stories.
Well, I think one of the things with Chicago, and it was even recommended within the report, is that they need better oversight. Whether it's the sergeants watching the other officers, whether it's the lieutenants, whether it's the district commanders, everyone needs to hold everyone else accountable. And what's the problem is you have this toxic culture where they're all buddy-buddy, they're all looking out for each other. The ones that get promoted tend to be politically connected to somebody in the top. Now, that's Chicago. I mean, we're talking about a very large agency.
Sure.
So you look at a smaller agency where you don't have as much of that going on. That's why you have less corruption. But when you're dealing with nearly 10,000 officers on the Chicago Police Department, even if you have only 5% of the officers who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You're talking about 500 people.
That's a lot.
You know, what if you're talking just 1%?
Yeah.
What if it's 1%? You can say 99% of all officers are great. That means you got 100 morons on your force.
Right.
And that 100 can cause
havoc.
that 100 can cause a lot of havoc. That 1% can cause a lot of havoc. And
they do.
And they do. And it gets into Gary McCarthy has said this a lot, and so have other police superintendents. They don't really have the power to fire some of these officers. It comes down to the police board, and that they can recommend the firing, but the board has to be the ones that go through with it.
Sure.
And then you're going to have the FOP come in, and they're going to represent the officer because the officer has rights. Oh, well, this and this. And a lot of times, you know, the discipline is recommended ends up being compromised. So when that happens, then the officers kind of feel like, oh, okay, well, nothing's really going to happen. I mean, we have another situation here recently where an officer forcefully threw a body slam the guy to the ground. He says that the guy spit on him and disobeyed a lot of orders. We don't know the full story. The videotape only shows him getting body slammed. I'm sure there was a lot more interaction before that.
Sure.
But there's another situation. They've taken those two officers involved in that case while they investigated. They've taken them off the street. Well, that also hurts the public.
Sure.
You know, we don't need officers off the street in Chicago.
Right.
With as much stuff as we got going on, you need them on the streets.
Yeah.
But they need to be on the streets and be effective.
Yeah. Not menacing.
Not menacing. I think one of the first things they can do is do a better and a more thorough job of in their recruitment process in terms of who they're going to even give a badge and a gun to anyway. And the problem that Chicago is having, they're having a problem recruiting a lot of people. They're having a problem recruiting good people. Chicago police officers make a pretty good amount of salary, and so a couple of officers have told me one of the problems is, especially when the job market might be down, you'll have a lot of people who are graduating from college and can't really get a job or can't get a good paying job to pay off their loans. So a lot of times what they're seeing is they're getting officers who are from the suburbs who may not have interacted with Hispanic people or black people who say, okay, I need to do this job so I can make this money, and they get pretty good boosts within like the first couple of years. They're up there. They're like 75, 80,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they start out around 50, I want to say, maybe even a little bit more than that, and they're currently renegotiating a new contract, and they want a 16% raise. But they get boosted up pretty quickly, and that allows them to pay off some of those bills. But in the meantime, you're taking someone from the suburbs, the lily suburbs, who've never dealt with inner city life, don't have any street sense whatsoever, and then you drop them off in a community that has a high crime rate with a culture of people they're not used to dealing with. And when I talk to many of the black officers, they say a lot of these guys are just scared. Or a lot of these women are just scared. They don't know what to do. So their first defense is they're going to grab that weapon.
Wow.
They're going to grab that taser. They're going to go hands-on when they probably could de-escalate some of these situations.
What about the training? Does the training not address that?
Well, that's a good question. Police training differs by agencies.
Sure.
So let me just give you one small example that everyone can probably relate to. A couple things Chicago has done in my lifetime that's changed. Look at their uniforms. If you look at the police officer uniforms from the 70s, they had the nice shiny patent leather shoes. They wore ties, which was not actual ties. They had clip-ons. It was a more professional look.
Sure.
They've gone now to this more militaristic look.
Absolutely.
Even down to the shoes. They're wearing like combat boots. They're wearing like the cargo pants. It's like they're going out there we going to war. You know, you look at state police officers, Illinois state police officers, their uniform hadn't changed like that. They're not really wearing all that. Some people do, but for the most part, if you get pulled over by a trooper, they got the little clip-on tie thing. They got the uniform that's pressed sharp. The pants are you know, ironed, pleated pants, and they got the shiny shoes on. It gives you a more professional look. And it's just like anyone else. When you're dressed a certain way, you feel a certain way about yourself. My first concern is just the uniform or how they dress.
Wow.
Now, there argument is that, hey, well, we got to be comfortable. Well, other agencies, their officers got to be out there just as long to do their patrols. They seem comfortable and being able to get it done. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing to me. I didn't like that change when they made that, and I still don't like it.
I hadn't even considered it.
Right, that's the first thing. Well, here's the second thing. In terms of their equipment, when I was growing up in the 70s, early 80s, all police officers had a nightstick. Yeah. They all had a nightstick. When's the last time you seen Chicago with a nightstick? You're not going to see it because they don't train them with it anymore. Okay? So they went from the nightstick to the asp. The asp is the one that they can take and extend it. It's like a baton, and you can extend it. Really don't even use that anymore. Okay? What they've gone to are the tasers, but before they had the tasers, they tried the chemical spray, the pepper spray. Well, I knew that was a bad idea because this is Chicago. It's called the Windy City.
I was about to say, it's going to backfire immensely.
it gets windy here.
Yeah.
You know, how effective is that going to be? If you spraying this at some suspect, the thing's going to come back at you. You can spray a whole bunch of other people. So a couple of them still have that, but they don't really use that. So just their equipment in general has gotten more aggressive. And what that has done is they seem to go to those pieces of equipment faster, as opposed to the way they were trained before. A lot of them did a lot of hands-on training. Sure. A lot of them knew jujitsu. A lot of them knew how to do certain locks to control a suspect. Or a lot of them, because there was a requirement where you only needed a high school degree, a lot of these people were straight, you know, they from the hood too. Yeah. You know, they were good people, but they're from the hood. They've been in some fights. Yeah. They ain't got no problem going hands on. Right. Well, if you're recruiting people from the little suburbs who ain't never had a fight in their life, and now they got to try to go hands on with someone who really can go hands on, do you think they're going to go hands on? They're not. They're going to pull that equipment out. Yeah. They're going to pull that equipment out. They're going to be more aggressive. Those are just two of the things.
Combine that with fear. And
you combine that with fear, and it's deadly. And I think that's something they need to look at, just in terms of how they are training them, how they're addressing them, their mentality. And it's a very difficult job, don't get me wrong. And dealing with some of these fools out here, you know, I get it. I really do. And it takes a special person to be a police officer. And I think what they've done is they've taken that special person aspect and they don't consider it. And they're just trying to fill spaces. Because they're having such a problem with recruiting. They're trying to get people out there so that they can fill the patrol cars up to do the patrols. So, you know, the other thing, and I actually agree with the FOP on this as well, is that there's not a lot of two-person squad cars as much. A lot of it is one person. Yeah. So if you have one person out there and they know they're going to have to call for backup, and they get into a physical situation,
their response is going to be different.
Their response is going to be different.
Because look, we want everybody to go home
safely. That's right. That's right.
I want, officer, I need you to go home safely, but please don't shoot my cousin on the way. Right. Unless he started it.
Right. You know, it's a lot that they have to consider too. You know, you're in a one-person car. They have to. Very quickly.
They have to make very quickly. Assessments.
So, you know, I think everyone kind of understands that too. I think the department has been in a position because people are making these decisions at City Hall and in other places, and they're putting even more stress on police officers. I think their job is now more stressful than it's ever been before. I mean, I'm a sports referee in 3 sports. Referees, we deal with the same thing. You know, when those kids come onto the court, they bring a lot of their problems that they had earlier in the day onto the court. Or if they had a problem at home, they bring it onto the court. And we're the authority figures, so they're going to lash out at us.
Yeah, so I'm a teacher.
Right, and you're a teacher. You get it. You know, and I know the police officers are getting that too. Yeah. So I just think we've put so much pressure on law enforcement in this country. Law enforcement has not checked their own throughout decades. They cover up for one another. We know that as well. And you put all these things together, you got a powder keg. You have a powder keg here. So I just think that the police department itself, it needs to take a strong look at itself in terms of how it's doing things. Yeah. And the people who are in charge of police department have to take a look in the mirror and see what are they doing with some of these decisions. And the public themselves, we also have to take a look at ourselves. How are we behaving when we're out in public? Are we taking into consideration how this can be viewed from their eyes too?
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things, I tell my wife all the time, my whole thing is, if I ever have to interact with police, my main goal is to get them away from me as fast as humanly possible. Because the longer I interact with them, the longer something could be misconstrued and go sideways in a heartbeat. So, my key is try not to bring no attention to yourself, first of all.
Yeah.
And then if you do, and you do have to interact with them, try to get it over with as quickly as possible while also maintaining your rights. But you also need to make good common sense decisions during those interactions.
Absolutely. Agreed. I think that's a great summation of what's going on. And man, best wishes to all the officers, because again, we want you to come home and all that, and we want everybody safe. I think that's the goal. Safety. You and I corresponded on Facebook this week. Was it last week?
I think it was last week, because that was when everything was kind of really. And
so there's a lot of discussion about human trafficking, and while I'm glad it's in the forefront, if y'all would stop sending me inboxes, I'd appreciate it. Human trafficking, missing Black and brown women,
yes,
going unaddressed. And on another show on the station, on the Vibrant Mix, we always talked about the Black and missing. And so someone shared an article, and then I shared, an opinion, and I shared it. And the opinion was, you know what, fellas, we appreciate you looking out for us. I'm summarizing. But we need you to talk to your boys. Like, yes, we know to be careful. Yes, we are looking around. My girlfriend teases. She's like, girl, I'm fat. Ain't nobody gonna kidnap me. Okay, fine. That's her opinion. But we all have to be diligent about our safety. I agree with that. But the gist of this particular opinion piece was, when you're gonna talk to your guys about the way they act, the way they respond. And of course, and I do not like to speak in generalities. Like, I'm very, I hate when people do it. But I can point to, my ex-husband's good girlfriend, who politely told a man, I'm married, I can't talk to you. And he hauled off and hit her in the face and broke her orbital bone. Really? Obviously he's a nut, but, and so maybe that's not somebody you could have talked to. But I think the point of that particular opinion piece was, hey, we deal with this. What can you do? What can you share with your male counterparts? And you had some thoughts about that. We didn't get a chance to talk, but we have all these microphones here.
So I am turning 50 next year.
Yay.
Yay me.
Happy
Yay me.
Birthday. You look
thank
great.
you.
Like
and
some 30-year-olds who don't look. I'm just telling you.
and when you get, in your 40s, you grown. You realize, it's like Cedric Entertainer said, you like, man, I'm grown, for real.
Real grown.
And you get wiser with how you put your messages out.
Sure.
Our boy Ziggy, one of our classmates, David Ziegler, we love him. Ziggy liked to just put stuff out there, and then when bombs start dropping all around him and bullets, he going, why y'all attacking me? I'm like, man, we done told you. It's the delivery, bro. It's the delivery. You can't tell them what to do.
Right.
I can't tell my wife what to do.
Right.
I can make some suggestions, and every once in a while I can maybe put my foot down on something if it's real serious and I know I'm 100% right, and she 100% wrong, but that don't happen too much. Because my wife got a PhD. She a heck of a lot smarter than my butt.
I love it.
But it's the delivery.
Sure.
And the other part is that these violent crimes that have been taking place against women, these high-profile cases, and there's two in particular we can talk about, it's hard for all of us, men and women, to hear these horrendous stories of sisters being kidnapped, of sisters being trafficked, of sisters being murdered, of sisters being assaulted, of sisters just being harassed if they on the bus stop and dudes saying outlandish stuff to them, because that's part of it too. That weighs on your mind too. That's a safety issue.
Yeah.
On how we say
careful.
this. That's right.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be a physical assault. It's a lot of that goes on. So we're all upset by that.
Absolutely.
I'll get to your first part. In terms of the media, historically, the media has ignored African American people when they came up missing. And the statistics had shown it. There was a lot of people who were doing the statistics that said, if a woman goes missing, the best chance you have of getting your story out in the media and have everybody looking for you is if you are white with blonde hair.
That was number one.
Number one. Be a very attractive white lady with blonde hair, it'll be all over the place. The media has gotten better in this area. I have to give the Sun-Times credit. And a lot of people are not giving them credit, and they should. They have it on their website every day, like missing people. And most of those people that I've seen have been African American or Hispanic. So they saw that need, and they have addressed it. I do know one of the editors there who's African American. I know he pushed for that. They're doing it. There are a lot of other mainstream newspapers doing it. The Chicago Crusader, they try to write about it.
Sure.
So it has gotten better in that. My thing now is, how do we prevent this from even happening?
Sure.
From even happening. So I'll talk a little bit about the theories we have out there on some of the stuff that's going on, and then our conversation on the safety issue. So in terms of safety, it's a responsibility of both men and women. It's a responsibility from women from this standpoint, in that please just don't put yourself in a vulnerable situation. For men, talk to other men and put them in check. Man, you hear when dude's saying something foul?
Right.
You know when something is over the line. Now, when he says something over the line, do you just laugh it off?
Right.
Do you pull him away? Come on, man, leave her alone. Or do you say, hey, man, that ain't called for. You can't do that around me. Right. That's the conversation that need to be. Hey man, you can't do that.
Don't do that.
You can't do that, man. That ain't cool. And you gotta be serious about it. Yeah. No, dog, that ain't cool, man. Because a guy can check another guy like that. You know, imagine what if you got 2 or 3 guys in here, and them 2, 3 guys step to him. Hey man, we ain't doing that here, man. Absolutely. That's our role right there. No, man, we ain't doing that. So what happened, last week, a lot of men so frustrated by these incidents, and they were saying it with, good intentions, but they were going in, women, you need to stop doing this, women, you need to stop doing that, and women started clapping back on them. Well, why don't you tell your boy, right? Then you ain't got to worry about me. You know what he doing. And the men was saying, I don't know no murderers. You thinking like I'm running around with a bunch of kidnappers in my crew? I'm hanging out with Jason and right. I don't know no guy that's actually out here doing this stuff. Right. But I know there are men out there that are doing it. Sure. So I think the message has to be, men have to deliver the message where it's coming from a place of love and not a place from authority. I think that's the thing we have to do. Black men and black women have been through a lot in this country. Sure. And, one of the things, our role is as of a protector, but there's still a lot of stuff we're dealing with mentally because of slavery. Absolutely. We couldn't protect our sisters there. There's a lot of situations where we couldn't protect our sisters. And there was some situations we could have and we didn't. So black women kind of have this kind of a mistrust about us. Sure. Going on too. So there's a lot of that we need to work through. But when we say these things, it has to come from a good heart, and it has to come from a place of love. I see it all the time. Even though I don't live in Chicago anymore, it happens everywhere, where you'll see a woman walking down the street and she's completely oblivious to her surroundings. She's got headphones on and jogging. She's got her cell phone out, and this is her head for 3 minutes just walking. She has no idea of what is coming on around there. There's a way you talk to them when you see that, where it's not disrespectful, and you try to serve it as a teaching moment. Just as you're trying to teach that guy who just said something completely out of pocket or did something out of pocket in your presence. There's the same way you can approach sisters with that. we have to do it from a learning experience. So what I'll do now is I'll just say a couple of things that I tell my wife all the time. And some of these things she didn't agree with. It took a while for her to see my point of view from coming with it.
Sure.
So my wife, one of the things that drove me crazy was she's one of the people who doesn't like to carry cash. And a lot of people are like that now because the society has made it where you don't need cash. See, you raising your hand. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a scenario.
Okay.
And this is why I told her this, and this is why I want you to not do that.
Okay.
In all instances, do not do that.
All right.
Okay. Let's say a guy comes up to you and he's getting ready to rob you, and all he really wants is the money.
Okay.
Give me your money. Well, I don't have no cash on me. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, now you just ratcheted up the level of this. Because now he done already pulled a weapon on you. You done seen his face. And you can't give him no money.
Right.
So now he can now assault you. He can now want to rape you. He can now just shoot you because you couldn't give him the thing that he really wanted to get him the hell away from you. That's why you need to keep cash on you. That's the main reason. And they call it mug money, like M-U-G. Mm-hmm. In case a mugger comes up to you, you need to be able to give them something to get them away.
And that's funny because one of my, Reverend Dr. Lacey Curry he founded the grammar school I went to. And as I was interviewing him, he got a phone call from a relative, a younger relative of his. And he's talking and he got on. He's like, I told that boy to carry a dummy wallet. Put $5 in it. Somebody says, give me your wallet. That's the one you hand over.
Right.
So yeah, right. Understood completely.
You see what I'm saying? You want to get them away from you.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have nothing to give them, they may try to just take something. And you can identify them now. You're now a threat. He gonna be like, I just put myself out here and I ain't getting no money.
Right. I'm finna kick your butt.
That's right. And we don't want you to get hurt.
Sure.
He may hit you upside the head with a pistol. He may try to rape you. There's a number of scenarios. So that's one of the reasons. Second thing is, if you're ever in a situation where the person is trying to get you in the trunk, do not get in the trunk at all costs.
Agreed.
Your chances of survival go down tremendously
if you go to the second location.
If you go to the next location. As horrible as this sounds, the act itself of violence is a horrible thing, and you have to think of it like this: if they gonna do something to me, I need them to do it to me right here.
Yeah, agreed. I run that scenario through my head because I watch forensic files all day in my spare time, and I'm like, I can hear myself. You gonna have to shoot me right here.
That's right.
All right. I mean, I know who Jesus is. Come on, but we not going nowhere else.
We ain't going nowhere else.
So here's where the shot happens, or I don't know what to tell you.
Right. And so now that's a completely different situation than our first scenario, where we were saying, okay, here you go, take this, because that may be effective to get them to stop what they're doing and get them away. If they got the gun on you and they're literally trying to take you to a second location,
that's very
whether
different.
Pull you into a van or drop you into a truck or something, that's a problem. So that'll lead to my third scenario that I talked to my wife about. I know you all love to shop. Not you, Tasha.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm an Amazon girl.
That's even better.
I'm not even interested in like that.
Well, we're in the prime shopping season, so we know a lot of people are out in malls and everything. It's getting dark earlier. You're out in mall late. One of the things you want to try not to do, and even though they're not as popular as they once were, if you're in a parking lot and you're trying to find a space and you got two minivans parked on each side of you,
that's not where you're going.
Don't park your car in between the two minivans.
Listen, not one minivan, especially if it's white, because again, I watch forensic files all day. So I ain't trying to park. First of all, I don't want you scratching my car, so I'm all the way on the other end where ain't no other car at. Like, nope, you won't get me.
I hear you. Don't park between the minivans. Yeah. Please don't do that, because it's just so easy for them to open that door, snatch you in,
and you can't do nothing about it.
Nobody will even know it. If you're lucky lucky they saw you on the security camera. But let's be honest, the mall security dude making about $10 an hour, he ain't looking at them cameras like that.
He's talking to his homie, at the shoe store.
Right. So
I have an app on my phone called Life 360.
Sure.
And I'm a new realtor. So when I go places to show homes, my mother's like, hey, who knows? And I'm like, it's all electronic. Everybody knows where I am. But I also text, 6 of my girlfriends.
Right.
Hey, this is where I'm going to be. And I'm going to text you when I'm safe. But one, she happened to have, she had already made me get it on my phone, Life 360. And she can literally track me.
Good.
So yesterday, I showed a home and then I left. I said, I'm safe. Now I'm at the beauty shop. She said, I see you. She's watching.
Right.
So we all, even when you're in an Uber.
Right.
You can
do that.
Send it out.
Yeah.
This is where I am. Here's a picture. If somebody comes to my house, Jason, to fix something, I'm snapping his picture and sending it out like, this who killed me.
Right.
Kill him.
My wife and I do that same thing. She does the same thing. She uses Lyft a lot for her company. I always know her location.
Yeah.
I always know her location. I always know who the driver is. Those are all great practices, and these are things that people should do. Sure. And it's not gender specific, men. You can do these things too.
Because there are crazy people.
That's right. That's right.
No matter what.
We're talking about women in this specific situation. Here's another thing that women do. You have a lot of stuff on your phone when you get in your car. So maybe you want to play your music through your phone. So what happens is, and I see it all the time, women will get in the car. They get in the car, and because you can't text and drive, the police are always telling everybody, don't be doing it while you're driving, which I understand. That's a safety issue too. But what'll happen is women will get in the car and start the car, and now they start doing this.
Fiddling with the phone.
And it's taking them 3 or 4 minutes to get the right station, get the right volume. Oh, I want this app. But in the meantime, you got your head down and you're sitting in the car.
Looking like a victim.
And somebody watching.
I don't know. I'm different, and I grew up in Inglewood.
Right.
My parents are still over there. I don't even carry my purse anymore. I'm like, I don't need that. It's in the trunk, or I just leave it at home, like I did yesterday. But I'm like, before I leave the house, I set, because my car will pick up the Bluetooth when I get in.
Sure.
I'm like, whatever's on, that's what we listening to. I got only good music on my phone anyway. But, or this scenario that I've spoken to some of my girlfriends about, when you get in the car, you in the back, putting the bag over here.
Right.
You don't throw that stuff in the car and just pull off.
Right.
Because if you sit, you're
making yourself a victim. The other thing you do when you lift the trunk of your car, what are you doing? What did you just cut down on?
Light? I don't know.
You just cut down your vision.
Oh.
You can't see who in front of your car because the trunk is up here. So now you just cut off half of your vision, and the only other part of vision you have is behind you, and you don't have eyes in the back of your head. So you can basically only see somebody if they come at you
and by that
from
time
the side.
It's too late.
And by that time it's too late.
It's too late, yeah.
It's too late. So one of the things I tell women to do also is there are magnetic mirrors that you can get, and you can put them in the trunk of your car so that when you flip the trunk up, you've got the mirror so that way you can see behind you.
Okay.
And that's something that costs you $3.
I'll be ordering those.
Right.
Thank you.
You're an Amazon girl. There you go. There you go. So I mean that's a great little thing that you can do.
Sure.
All these things decrease your chances of becoming a victim. There's nothing that's going to be perfect and foolproof.
Sure.
But you want to limit your chances, and your biggest weapon is your mind. This is your biggest tool. This is your best self-defense tool right here, and you have to use it. You have to learn things. There's a guy named Tim Larkin. He's an expert, security expert. He writes books on people, how to protect yourselves, everything from gun owners to hand-to-hand. I mean, this guy is really good. He wrote a book specifically for women that I just bought for my wife so that she can read. What I really would like to see, which I discussed with our guy David, is especially for sisters, I think sometimes the message needs to come from someone else. I would love to see a female African American who's got security credentials, who's an expert on this. I'd love to see them produce a material and put it out for sisters to read, because I think you all will gravitate towards that a little bit more in some situations, because you say, hey, she's dealing with the same situations I'm dealing with. You know, I appreciated the compliment earlier about me turning 50, but I don't have, people screaming at me cat calls when I walk down the street. I'm not really, it's not like my major concern thinking somebody about to take me and try to, do something to me like that. But for my female cousins, for my godchildren, for my wife, for my aunts, that's something you all have to live with reality. That's your 100% reality every day, where it's not mine. Sure. So I think a person who could produce those type of materials, whether it's books, videos, podcasts, or whatever, I think Black women will really gravitate towards that. I think it's something that's necessary in our community, and can help increase safety.
Agreed.
And then the last part I'll talk about is, and it's been hilarious. So you've known me a very long time. You know I've been a long proponent of legalized gun ownership.
Hallelujah.
I mean, we've lived in a state and in a city where those rights have been trampled upon for so many years, and it didn't really start getting better until around 2013. I mean, for those who don't know, in Chicago, you could not legally own a handgun until like 10 years ago because of Otis McDonald, African-American man who took the city of Chicago all the way to the Supreme Court and won. And I'm very good friends with his family. I spoke at his funeral. He's really an unknown Black hero around the country because of what he did, what he put himself through to get those rights for people in Chicago, just to be able to own a gun, to keep it in your house.
Not even carrying it around.
Right, just in your house. That's what he had to go through. Now it's at the point where, you can go take the classes and you can now legally carry. What I found, Tasha, which is actually funny, when I first started my own personal campaign to get more sisters to become legal gun owners, this started happening even before Chicago passed the law. I got a lot of pushback.
Really?
Well, think about it. If you haven't had experience with guns, and you live in an area like Chicago where all you hear about is gun violence, over time, it just puts in your mind guns are bad. These things are terrible. Which is why when they have gun program buyback, people were going turning into guns. Yeah, we need to just get the guns off the street. Well, the dude who robbing people he ain't
turning his.
He ain't turning his.
If he did, he turned in yours that he stole.
Or he turned in one that got some cases on it. He was like, yeah, y'all can have this one.
Wow.
So, gun ownership. Since our current president has gotten into office, it was a story that came out. It was a story that came out last week. I try to be professional.
You are great.
The amount of gun ownership among African American women has gone up 40%. The amount of gun ownership among African Americans in general since he has taken office has gone up about 45 to 50%. And this is because we have seen more racial attacks.
Sure.
It's almost like they came out from underneath their rocks.
They did.
And we found out, hey, he never got rid of his gun.
Right.
Matter of fact, he got something extra on his gun. How do you even get that type of gun? They had them all the time. They've always had them. That's how they got the country.
Yeah, we're clear.
Okay.
Columbus Day month.
That's right. We were the ones who never had them. And there were laws passed where we couldn't be legal gun owners. There's a lot of things we couldn't do. We couldn't read. Yeah, that's kind of important. We couldn't vote. That's kind of important. We couldn't own guns.
We couldn't defend ourselves.
But
what happened with the Black Panthers?
That's right.
Oh, now it's a problem because the Black men
exactly. But there was still, and there's still some Black people today who can't put the gun part and connect it with the voting rights and the reading. They don't understand why is this so important? And I'm not saying you have to go out and buy a gun, but you should know how to operate. You need to know how to use one.
Agreed.
And legalized gun ownership amongst Black women has increased. There are now classes for women only. A lot of places offer women-only classes where you can be a novice. You can go in there and they can start teaching you the fundamentals. I've been shooting since I was 12. I learned as a Boy Scout, which a lot of people are like stunned about because they think all we do is do hot dogs and marshmallows and walk old women across the street. But I was 12 years old and I started shooting with a .22 caliber bolt action rifle. The rifle was, and I got pictures of it. The rifle was literally like almost as tall as me.
That's great.
And so So, I learned from prone position and worked my way up. So, that was my first introduction to guns. So I didn't have that mental block of guns are bad. Guns are a tool.
Yeah.
They're a tool, and they're used for defense. They're used to destroy things when things need to be destroyed. It takes a lot of responsibility to own a gun. A lot of responsibility. And for those who are able-bodied, who are able-minded, and who can legally own one, it doesn't hurt you to learn it. It's just another skill to have.
Agreed. I took a class before the shift happened in Chicago because at the time I wasn't sure where I was about to move to.
Sure.
And I told my girlfriend, I said, come take this class with me. And she was like, I don't want to take no gun class. And I was like, why not? And she was like, cause I'm not comfortable. And so finally when we got to the root of it, I said, why don't you want to take a gun class? I'm paying for it, girl. Come on. Mm-hmm. She said, every woman in my family has shot a man. I said, okay.
Oh my.
So she said, nobody died. But she didn't want to, she was like, I just feel like it was the block. It's the guns are bad. I said, okay. First of all, that's not your heart. Like, you're not going to be out here randomly shooting guys. And I'm sure they asked for it.